the small town of Simpsonville, South Carolina, something shocking and tragic happened. It is a story of a life unraveling filled with hope, trust, and ultimately betrayal. This is the story of Katy Blauvelt, a 22-year-old woman whose life was brutally taken by the person who should have loved her the most. Cati Ann Boiter was born on August 8, 1994, to Patricia Ann and Richard Boiter. She grew up in Mountville, South Carolina, alongside her brother Brandon and sister Brittany. Known for her cheerful disposition, Cati was a bright and dynamic young woman who exuded kindness and warmth. She had a deep love for animals, a trait that naturally extended to the way she cared for the people around her. After her parents divorced and her mother remarried Daniel Piver, Cati wholeheartedly embraced her blended family. She welcomed the addition of 4 sisters and another brother with open arms and developed a close bond with her stepfather, finding joy in the new family dynamic. This strong family bond would remain a cornerstone of Cati's life, and her love for her family was evident in everything she did. As a child, Cati was full of energy and had an innate ability to connect with others. Her love for animals, which started at a young age, only grew stronger as she got older, and Cati dreamed of becoming a veterinarian to help care for animals in need. School was always a place where she thrived, excelling in her studies and forming lifelong friendships. At 18, Cati met John Blauvelt, a U.S. Army recruiter stationed nearby. John was charming and seemed like everything Cati had dreamed of in a partner. He swept her off her feet, and the two quickly became inseparable. They shared a whirlwind romance, and within a year, John proposed to Cati. Filled with excitement about their future, Cati said yes, believing she had found her forever love. However, after their marriage, things began to unravel. John's behavior became increasingly erratic, and Cati found herself trapped in a toxic relationship. What had seemed like a fairy tale quickly became a nightmare. John, who had once been loving and attentive, grew distant and controlling. Their marriage, which should have been a foundation for a bright future, was marked by instability, emotional manipulation, and growing tension. On October 24th, 2016, Cati was reported missing. The following day, her body was discovered in an abandoned house basement. Stabbed multiple times, the scene was brutal, with a knife blade broken off in her neck. This was no random act of violence. It was the tragic culmination of a deeply troubled relationship. Investigators were immediately suspicious. John Blauvelt, instead of showing grief or concern, appeared unfazed by the tragedy. His strange demeanor raised questions that would soon lead authorities down a dangerous path. Shortly after the murder, John fled with his 17-year-old girlfriend Hannah Thompson. Together, they disappeared, traveling across the country, leaving behind a trail of uncertainty. Authorities were left with no answers, only a fugitive to chase. From South Carolina, the trail led to New Mexico, then to Oregon. But despite the efforts of law enforcement, John continued to elude capture. Hannah, the teenager who had been with him, was eventually found alone in Oregon, abandoned, and returned to her home state. It would be years before justice caught up with John Blauvelt. In July of 2022, U.S. Marshals, after a 6-year search, located him living under a false identity in Medford, Oregon. He was arrested without incident, but the damage had already been done. John Blauvelt was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His 17-year-old accomplice, Hannah Thompson, was charged with obstruction and accessory after the fact. She faces her own legal battle, her role in the crime still under scrutiny. For Cati's family, the pain of her loss remains immeasurable. Her mother, Patty Peaver, said it best. She did not deserve this. The heartache continues, but at least for them there is a sense of closure. Justice has been served. The story of Katy Blauvelt is a tragic reminder of the dangers of domestic violence, manipulation, and the destructive power of control. For her family, there will always be a hole left in their hearts. But with the conviction of John Blauvelt, there is also a sense of justice. The past may never be erased, but it can be the catalyst for a brighter future. For those who remain, for those who choose to heal. Thank you for watching.